Do you know what's really fragile, or to the autistic viewers, really, really fragile? That's right. Humanity. I've intentionally been vague there because I kind of thought, well, we're going to cover a particular part of humanity, but I can't help but throw just a little dig at all of you. All you humans. Or are we going to change that in the future to hum-exon? How do you pronounce that? Should we just go with filthy bipedal species that is wasting valuable time arguing over truly derivative subject matter? And yes, I, of course being Cthulhu-Kin, am pontificating from a rather high perch. I like being pretentious, okay? I mention all of this and am being as arrogant as I can possibly be. Human Cthulhu-Kin-y be? Something. Not human, so I guess it's Cthulhu-Kin-y. Because of an article from the Washington Post, which is titled, How Donald Trump Appeals to Men Secretly Insecure About Their Manhood. I don't see this as something that should be considered scandalous. I thought I would make that point quite clear now. The job of any politician is to appeal to as many people as possible, and once he has, or she has, got the votes needed to do what they want to do, they can then push ahead with things that might also be unpopular with the very people that voted for them. So whatever Donald Trump is doing, he may well just be playing a game, because that's the whole point of politics. I think most of us can agree, politics is everywhere. It's the Illuminati, don't you know? And to succeed in any game, like politics, you must play it. From boasting about the size of his penis, as we all know, people who boast about the size of their penis are usually lying, on national television, to releasing records of his high testosterone levels. I'm often baffled how high they are. They are so high, yes, they are over 9,000, so you would think he'd have no follicles on his head, because he is so masculine. President Trump's rhetoric and behavior exude machismo. We are less than one paragraph through this article, and there are already 2 pieces of misinformation, or fake news as he would himself put it. The first being that he boasted about his high testosterone level, which according to Dr. Oz is 441, which is deemed good. When we actually look at what it should be for someone within his age range, you can certainly argue that yes, it is good, but hardly something that truly stands out as a high level of testosterone, since it seems to go down as you get older. The second is about the fact that he may have bragged about the size of his penis, when he didn't really say that. He actually said, in reference to Marco Rubio suggesting there was a problem with the size of his hands or anything else, he said, "Look at those hands. Are they small hands?" And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee. That is not an indicator that President Donald Trump is packing a whopper. Just an indication that there is no problem with what he is packing. Although I doubt his hips work like they used to. So it's highly likely someone else is fucking his wife for him. His behaviour also seems to have struck a chord with some Vale voters. See, for example, the quotes Donald Trump finally someone with balls t-shirt common at Trump rallies. But our research suggests that Trump is not necessarily attracting male supporters who are as confidently masculine as the president presents himself to be. Trump appears to appeal more to men who are secretly insecure about their manhood. We call this the fragile masculinity hypothesis, and here is some of our evidence. I would never be so naive as to refute there is such a thing as fragile masculinity, much like I would say the same for fragile femininity. It is entirely dependent on the type of man or woman that you are, and how you perceive that within your own standards. Of course, much like all things, it is influenced by the society around us, so how we grow up in the kind of culture we grow up in will certainly affect the kind of masculinity we experience or femininity, and whether we feel vulnerable, and for what reason. It is entirely circumstance-based. But I am interested to know how the Washington Post portrays fragile masculinity in this context. Oh, and before we get into that, I did look at the link you presented with the Donald Trump finally someone with balls t-shirt. The others that cropped up were Trump that bitch, you keep your advice, we'll keep our guns, and of course don't tread on Trump, peace through strength, and the badge Hot Chicks for Donald Trump, vote 2016 MAGA, which I think is quite fascinating. It's a shame you didn't mention those, but I get at the same time that the finally someone with balls is more relevant to the masculinity edge or agenda in this article. So what is fragile masculinity? Research shows that many men feel pressure to look and behave in stereotypically masculine ways, or risk losing their status as, quotes, real men. Masculine expectations are socialized from early childhood, and can motivate men to embrace traditional male behaviors, while avoiding even the hint of femininity. This unforgiving standard of maleness makes some men worry that they are falling short. These men are said to experience fragile masculinity. I'm a firm believer in sociological evolution happening at a lightning pace, so one can certainly agree, or I certainly do anyway, that what it means to be a man changes with society. Granted, I do tend to think it doesn't happen as fast when it comes to gender, or sex in this instance. Gender is something else entirely that has changed like that. But I do tend to think those gender roles as we have certainly known to exist over our lifetimes. My childhood certainly may have had some, but as my mother and father both worked full-time, we didn't experience it as much. The point is, they did certainly exist within the nuclear family when I was a kid, just not in my household. I do want to quickly look at the research that was presented, but as I am unable to purchase it, all I have to go on is the abstract. The authors report 5 studies that demonstrate that manhood, in contrast to womanhood, is seen as a precarious state requiring continual social proof and validation. I'm not going to offer a comment on that because I'm sure many of you, my viewers, my lovely, lovely viewers, hello, are probably quite annoyed by that sentence, or tend to disagree with it, based on how society is treated and how we have progressed and so on. Because of this precariousness, they argue that men feel especially threatened by challenges to their masculinity. Some would argue that it could be as much an attack on a particular type of masculinity as it is a misandrist attack. Is that a thing? I'm sure someone's going to say no, but I think people know what I mean. Attacking men for the sake of attacking, or addressing something that is decidedly male because it doesn't conform to what society is currently at, the level that is. Certain male-typed behaviors, such as physical aggression, may result from this anxiety. As the rest of the abstract indicates what each paper in turn references, we're going to go back to the article and see how they portray this. The political process provides a way that fragile men can reaffirm their masculinity. By supporting tough politicians and policies, men can reassure others of their own manliness. For example, sociologist Rob Willer has shown that men whose sense of masculinity was threatened increased their support for aggressive foreign policy. How do we measure fragile masculinity? Now, this actually intrigues me the most. How do you collect data on individuals and present it as fact, or as a theory with support? Because, as I've stated, I like to address individuals as individual and not movements or groups. I think that, while there can be trends certainly found within, I would still much rather address the individual. So, measuring fragile masculinity poses a challenge. I'm glad you accept this. We do not simply do a poll of men who might not honestly answer questions about their deepest insecurities. I'm sure that applies to everyone really, but in the context of this, I can understand that. Nobody likes to be open about how they feel about anything, really, if you're in England especially. Our apathy just closes all those doors. Instead, we relied on Google Trends, which measures the popularity of Google search terms. As Seth Stevens-Davidowitz has argued, people are often at their least guarded when they seek answers from the internet. Researchers have already used Google search patterns to estimate levels of racial prejudice in different parts of the country. We sought to do the same with fragile masculinity. So there are a couple of points I want to quickly raise from this. Firstly, I hope you got permission from those people to look at their search history. I think that's important. Simply collecting data and using it, that feels very unethical. I would also love to know whether the racial prejudice parts related to not just whites being prejudiced to people of other skin colours. So yes, reverse racism. I'm being sarcastic if that wasn't obvious enough. Oh, and to further cement my sarcasm, this is a graph about how trends were noticed when it came to using certain words in Google searches like the quotes N-word. The red areas being above the mean. Oh dear, America. Such a massive racist. Lol. Oh, and this is from 2007, so yeah. totally current year, right? The final point I wanted to point out was that some people, when they use the internet, don't really look for that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming you sifted out their Google searches on porn preferences. Or did you ask Pornhub to release data on, well, search histories? Doesn't matter, let's continue. We began by selecting a set of search topics that we believed might be especially common among men concerned about living up to the ideals of manlyhood. Quotes, erectile dysfunction, hair loss, how to get girls, penis enlargement, penis size, steroids, testosterone, and Viagra. With the exception of how to get girls, these are Google topics rather than individual search terms. For instance, the topic erectile dysfunction includes searches for erectile dysfunction, ED, and impotence. I feel like I learned something today. To validate this list of topics, we asked a sample of 300 men on Amazon's Mechanical Turk platform whether they ever had or ever would search for them online. We found that scoring high on a questionnaire measuring masculine gender roles discrepancy stress, concern that they aren't as manly as their male friends, was strongly associated with interest in these search topics. Although these men were not a representative sample of American men, their responses suggest that these search terms are a valid way to capture fragile masculinity. No, it isn't. You actually debunked it in your own words. Congratulations. I'm starting to see why sites like you are having to try and charge people $1 a month just to get people interested in reading your content. I do like how you go on to explain how fragile masculinity relates to voting behaviour with a beautiful graph here on search terms. It's fantastic. With your takeaway being that fragile masculinity is a critical feature of our current politics. Nonetheless, points of caution are in order. The first, the research reported here is correlational. Yeah, so let's just discard it. Second, it remains to be seen whether any link between fragile masculinity and voting will persist after Trump exits the national stage. Well, we don't know who would take over after him in 2024 now, do we? And of course, if you are any politician and you want to win, you have two options. You appeal to people, or you make them feel guilty for existing. Now, in 2016, one of the two candidates then appealed to people. The other demonized. While that person got the popular vote, they pissed off enough states that they actually lost. I wonder if the DNC have learnt this lesson yet. Not that it matters, I don't really care. 2020 everyone, no lives matter. So I hope everyone has a lovely Sunday, and thank you all for listening.